I never actually caught my ex-wife in the act, but deep down, I just knew something was off. So I turned into a bit of a digital detective, using this sneaky software that records every keystroke to snag her email password. This wasn't any ordinary account. Oh no, it was her secret one, the existence of which she thought I was clueless about. There I was, diving into her inbox the moment she stepped out for groceries, uncovering a whole saga of messages with this other guy. This went on for what felt like forever. Me, completely in the dark, until the last couple of weeks when my world started to crumble. Suddenly, everything was a whirlwind of emotion and denial. I was drowning in anger, yet part of me kept trying to pretend it wasn't account payable penning. It's like you're desperately clinging to this sinking ship of denial, but reality keeps smacking you in the face, reminding you the ship's not just sinking, it's about to explode. My sister was my lifesaver through all this. Despite the distance, her voice on the end of the line was like a beacon in the storm. She was all heart, but she also had that no-nonsense wisdom I was so in need of because, let's face it, I was a complete mess. I was teetering on the edge, thinking about doing something drastic, but I never went down that road. When my ex-wife got back from her errands, I was waiting for her in the garage, stopping her before she could even get out of the car. "I'll take the groceries in, but you need to leave now," I told her. Confusion was written all over her face, but I laid it out. "I know everything. It's best you leave right this second." Her response was a mix of denial and accusations of me losing my mind. But, channeling the calm and assertiveness my sister had armed me with, I stood my ground, making it crystal clear that her lies were getting her nowhere. Things got pretty rocky from there. The weeks following were a blur of hurt and attempts at mending what we could. I actually thought about forgiveness, letting her move back in, convincing myself that counseling could patch things up. Then I hit rock bottom, winding up in the hospital from the sheer weight of stress and sleepless nights. That scare seemed to jolt her into realizing the gravity of our situation, prompting her to plead for my forgiveness and vow to end her affair. But just when I thought there might be a sliver of hope, that nagging doubt crept back in. She was in the shower, oblivious to the fact that I still had the software on her computer, the very tool that unveiled her betrayal in the first place. It was like living in a loop of trust broken, then on the cusp of being rebuilt, only to shatter all over again. Discovering she had updated her email password didn't stop me. I managed to log in once more and uncovered that she had met with him just a day prior. My rage, previously undirected, now found a clear target: him. Armed with his address from a previous email, I set off to confront him, fueled by a chaotic blend of anger and a desire for confrontation. Miraculously, he wasn't home when I arrived, sparing us both from what could have been a regrettable encounter. Instead, I was met by his mother, an elderly woman who seemed completely disconnected from the drama unfolding. I left a message for him through her, a simple, "Dave stopped by," hoping the ambiguity of my visit would unsettle him. Retreating to a friend's house, I was joined by several others, a testament to the support system I was fortunate to have. They rallied around me, ensuring I didn't spiral further into potentially life-ruining actions. Meanwhile, my ex-wife's attempts to reach me grew desperate, likely piecing together my discovery from her unlogged email account. Our relationship took on a bizarre twist after that. Despite initiating divorce proceedings and her moving out, our encounters didn't cease. They even intensified, becoming more frequent and strangely detached from the reality of our situation. The oddity of engaging with someone I was in the process of divorcing, yet not fully detached from, was surreal. Her late-night messages, a simple, "Busy?" became our shorthand for these hollow encounters. Reflecting on the other man, my feelings shifted from anger to a sort of pitiful disdain. Seeing photos of him, he was far from what one might expect as a rival in love, older, out of shock count payable and lacking in presence. Yet, he offered her something she sought, an adoration that per account payable filled a void I couldn't. My musings on his inadequacies, particularly in the bedroom, were bitter but underscored the complexity of human desires and relationships. This period of my life was a labyrinth of emotions, actions, and reactions that, in retrospect, painted a vivid picture of the messiness of human connections. The journey through betrayal, confrontation, and the odd interim of continued intimacy with my soon-to-be ex-wife was a stark lesson in the unpredictability of love, the depth of hurt, and the potential for healing, even in the most twisted of circumstances. Discovering that she found emotional fulfillment with him, while seeking physical gratification from me, felt like a betrayal of the deepest kind. It was a blow that rocked the very foundation of trust and love we had built together. In the wake of this revelation, I found myself account payable playing with a maelstrom of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion, and ultimately, a profound sense of loss. At first, I struggled to comprehend how someone I loved and trusted could betray me in such a fundamental way. I questioned everything about our relationship, scouring my memories for signs that I had missed, clues that might have foretold this ultimate betrayal. But the truth was, her actions were a reflection of her own insecurities and desires, not a reflection of my worth as a person. In the midst of my pain, I made the difficult decision to sever ties and cut her out of my life. The last words I spoke to her echoed with a finality that reverberated through my soul. Lose my number. I never want to hear from you again. It was a declaration of independence, a reclaiming of my dignity and self-respect in the face of her betrayal. In the months that followed, I account payable pled with a roller coaster of emotions. There were days when I felt consumed by anger and bitterness, the sting of her betrayal still fresh in my mind. But there were also moments of clarity and acceptance, as I began to understand that her actions were not a reflection of my own worth, but rather a reflection of her own inner turmoil. As time passed, I threw myself into the process of self-discovery, determined to emerge from the ashes of my failed relationship stronger and more resilient than ever before. I surrounded myself with friends and loved ones who supported me unconditionally, and I rediscovered the joy and beauty in life's simple pleasures. Through perseverance and resilience, I began to heal. I learned to forgive her, not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. I let go of the anger and bitterness that once consumed me, and I embraced a future filled with hope and possibility. Today, I can look back on that painful account payable tear of my life with a sense of gratitude and perspective. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I doubted whether I would ever find account payable penis again. But through it all, I emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. I've learned to let go of the past and embrace the present moment. I've learned to forgive, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary for my own healing and growth. And most importantly, I've learned to love and respect myself, flaws and all. As I look to the future, I do so with optimism and hope. I know that there will be challenges ahead, but I also know that I have the strength and resilience to overcome them. And for that, I am truly grateful. It's frustrating that she never faced any consequences for her actions. At the very least, I never had the satisfaction of seeing her suffer while she had full control over my suffering. I'm aware she's married now to the guy she cheated on me with, and they still live with his parents in a smaller, less impressive house compared to where I live with my dog and wonderful girlfriend. I also know she's been switching Jopen broadcaster software frequently for the past 4 years. This knowledge comes from one of my closest friends, who also account payable pens to be her cousin and co-worker. Occasionally, he inadvertently reveals some information about her when discussing his family. They don't see her much anymore, because they've come to realize what a terrible person she truly is. However, there are times when I'm driving home from work after a rough day, and as I pass the exit to her current residence, I secretly hope there's a car accident in the area. I wish it would involve her, or honestly, even more so him. That would inflict more pain on her. I guess I might be a more vindictive person than I give myself credit for. Alright, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned, and let's dive into story 2. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I discovered that my 28-year-old wife had an affair with her ex-boss, a 35-year-old married man with kids. We've been married for 5 years, and we've been together since high school. In fact, we were even childhood neighbors. She's always been a constant presence in my life. We both came from broken families, and we thought we were creating something different from what we grew up with. At least, that's what I believed. Maybe I was just incredibly naive all along. I still work remotely, while my wife has gone back to working in person. There aren't many women in her field, and she often complained to me about her job feeling like a boys' club. Her affair partner, who was also her supervisor at the time, was supposed to be one of the good ones and looked out for her at work. Recently, my wife got a promotion, and I was genuinely account payable pie for her. She became a supervisor herself, which came with more responsibilities, including a few business trips throughout the year. Her first trip was last week, from Wednesday to Friday. Before she left, I told her I'd be cheering her on from home, and she told me to take care of her heart, because she always says that whenever we have to be account payable art. On Monday, she came home from work early, and I immediately sensed that something was wrong. She looked distressed, and there was a red mark on her right cheek. My wife is fair-skinned and bruises easily. I asked her what had account payable pinned, but she only wanted a hug and said she needed to feel my embrace. After hugging for a while, she finally admitted that something terrible had occurred at work. She sat me down on the couch and confessed to something that has shattered me and turned my life upside down. She had closeness with her former supervisor during the business trip. At first, the moment her confession began to unfold, it felt as though reality itself had taken an unexpected, cruel turn. It was as if I stood on the sidelines, observing a scene from a tragic drama, unable to believe that the protagonist was someone so intimately intertwined with my own existence. Silence enveloped me as her words hung heavy in the air, each syllable striking like a hammer against the fragile framework of trust we had painstakingly built. Cheating, a topic fraught with emotional landmines, had always been a sensitive subject for me. The wounds of my past, where my family was torn asunder by my father's infidelity, still festered beneath the surface. Yet, here I was, confronted once again with the specter of betrayal, this time at the hands of the person I held most dear. My wife, aware of the scars left by past transgressions, had witnessed my tears, tasted the bitterness of my anguish. She had been the solace in my storm, the anchor in my tumultuous sea. And yet, despite this shared history, she had chosen a path that led us down the darkest of alleys, where shadows of doubt and betrayal loomed large. The revelation of her affair, coupled with the sordid details of their tryst, struck at the very core of my being. With each word she spoke, a chasm widened between us, threatening to engulf the remnants of what we once held sacred. And yet, despite the tempest raging within, I remained stoic, my silence a shield against the onslaught of emotions threatening to consume me. As she recounted the events that had unfolded during her business trip, I felt a sense of detachment wash over me. Her words, like daggers aimed at my heart, pierced through the veil of denial, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and shattered dreams. The image of her, entwined with another, burned like a brand upon my consciousness, searing through the facade of trust I had so naively clung to. And then, amidst the wreckage of our shattered reality, came the realization that her betrayal extended far beyond the confines of our marriage. It had rippled outward, leaving behind a wake of devastation that touched the lives of others. The confrontation with the other woman, the slack account payable that echoed with the sting of indignation, each moment a testament to the collateral damage wrought by her indiscretion. Yet, even in the face of such turmoil, her pleas for forgiveness rang hollow in my ears. The gravity of her mistake, the depth of her remorse, all seemed inconsequential against the backdrop of the pain she had inflicted. And so, as she reached out to me, a gesture laden with desperation and longing, I recoiled, my heart hardened by the weight of her betrayal. In that moment, as the echoes of her confessions faded into the silence that stretched between us, I knew that our journey had reached an impasse. The road ahead, fraught with uncertainty and doubt, loomed ominously on the horizon. And though I could not foresee what lay beyond, one thing remained certain: the wounds inflicted by her betrayal would leave scars that time alone could never fully heal. She could undo it. She repeatedly professed her love for me, insisting that she loved only me and that alcohol had clouded her judgment. But as she pleaded for forgiveness, promising to make amends by quitting her job, granting me unrestricted access to her phone, and proposing counseling, I found myself teetering on the edge of despair. I knew deep down that trust, once shattered, is not easily mended. I informed her that she needed to leave immediately, urging her to call her sister to come pick her up. As she got up from the couch, crying even harder, and attempted to hug me, I distanced myself once again. She begged me not to take this course of action, making promises that sounded hollow against the backdrop of her betrayal. Unable to hold myself together, I told her that if she wasn't going to leave the house, then I would. Without pausing to pack a bag or gather my thoughts, I simply headed for the door. She grabbed my arm, seemingly trying to prevent me from leaving, and continued to plead with me, emphasizing that after everything we'd been through, this couldn't be the end of us. Update: yesterday, I decided to reach out to the other betrayed spouse. I felt it was crucial to hear her perspective, to gain clarity from someone who wouldn't have any reason to deceive me or hold back information. I located her Facebook account and messaged her on Messenger. She responded in less than 10 minutes and offered to video call right away. I promptly confirmed my availability with just one glance. No words exchanged. It was evident that she was going through a similar ordeal as me. She mentioned that shortly after being escorted out of the workplace last Monday, she actually attempted to get in touch with me but couldn't find my contact information. In fact, one of the last things she told my wife was a threat to inform me about the affair. As she recounted this, all I could think about was how my wife hurried home that day and how her sister insisted that I needed to hear about the affair from her. I inquired if she knew more about what account payable penned during the team-led trip, or if it was indeed just a one-night stand. I also asked how she found out about it. What she shared with me confirmed my worst fears. The affair had been ongoing before the trip, and she had documented proof in the form of text messages that indicated an intense emotional affair. Open Broadcaster software shared all this with me through screen sharing, and I could hardly keep my composure. She explained that back in January, she noticed her husband becoming distant and disinterested in their relationship. There were instances when she saw him texting my wife, but he dismissed it as work-related conversations. The day before the trip, she entered the workplace with a simple intention: to drop off something her significant other had forgotten. Yet, what she stumbled upon was a scene that would forever alter the course of her life. There, in his office, she found my wife and her husband, standing in close proximity, sharing jokes and smiles that carried a hint of flirtation. As their eyes met hers, the jovial atmosphere dissipated, replaced by an awkward tension. My wife's panic was palpable, contrasting sharply with her husband's feeble attempt at nonchalance. It was a moment frozen in time, a tableau of betrayal etched into her memory. Obbs, as she came to be known, recognized the signs immediately. The lingering glances, the shared laughter, they spoke volumes, confirming her worst suspicions. Yet, rather than confront the truth head-on, she chose a path of patience and prudence. She resolved to gather irrefutable evidence, to lay bare the deceit that threatened to unravel her world. In the aftermath of the business trip, her husband's behavior grew increasingly distant, his dismissiveness a silent indictment of his transgressions. It was in the stillness of the night, under the cloak of darkness, that she dared to confront the truth. Retrieving his phone, she delved into the digital abyss, uncovering a trail of betrayal that cut deep into her soul. The messages, once innocent exchanges, now painted a picture of infidelity. They spoke of stolen moments and forbidden desires, of a bond forged in secrecy and deceit. It was a betrayal not just of vows, but of trust and intimacy. And as she scrolled through the damning evidence, a fire ignited within her, a fire fueled by rage and betrayal. With each word read, with each revelation uncovered, her resolve hardened. No longer would she allow herself to be deceived, to be made a fool of. She knew what needed to be done, and she would not falter in her pursuit of justice. And so, with a heart heavy with sorrow and a mind ablaze with fury, she bided her time. She waited, a silent sentinel, until the moment was ripe for retribution. It was on that fateful Monday that she unleashed the full force of her wrath. In a blaze of righteous indignation, she confronted her husband at his workplace, exposing his deceit for all to see. And as the truth spilled forth, as the facade of respectability crumbled, she stood tall, a beacon of strength in a sea of deception. For her, there would be no forgiveness, no second chances. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and she would not rest until justice was served. And as she recounted her tale to me, her voice tinged with bitterness and sorrow, I couldn't help but admire her strength. She was a warrior, a survivor, standing tall in the face of adversity. And though her journey had been fraught with pain and betrayal, she emerged from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. I understood this sentiment all too well, having witnessed my own mother navigate a similar path after my father's transgressions. She spoke of the ordeal as a revelation, one that laid bare her husband's true character. Despite his pursuit of my wife, she harbored no sympathy or respect for her, viewing her as complicit in the affair. I reassured her that I didn't fault her for feeling that way. She had every right to her emotions. Surprisingly, she even account payable apologized to me for her husband's involvement in the affair, momentarily leaving me speechless. In turn, I account payable apologized for my wife's part in the situation. We acknowledged that we were now members of a club neither of us wished to join, a club our significant others had thrust us into. She inquired about my wife and me, and I informed her that I wasn't currently living with my wife. We wished each other the best, exchanged numbers, and left the door open for future conversations. Part of me couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that the other man was facing consequences, losing his job and potentially his family. However, I wasn't proud of that feeling. Simultaneously, I harbored immense anger toward my wife for what she had done to us, for breaking our vows and jeopardizing my health. We had been intimate after she returned from the trip, and the post-trip text suggested that protection may not have been used. I was aware of the need to re-establish contact with my wife to discuss the information provided by the other betrayed spouse and request a timeline update. In an update shared with everyone, I mentioned that I had been maintaining light contact with my wife. She had texted me about her post-suspension meeting and subsequently informed me that she had been fired. Despite the circumstances, she seemed unchanged from our last interaction on Sunday. She mentioned that she had completed the timeline, and I agreed to come over the next day. She expressed that writing the timeline had been one of the most challenging tasks she had ever undertaken, second only to our current separation. My mom offered to accompany me for support, clarifying that she wouldn't enter the house but would wait in a car. I accepted her offer, and we drove to my wife's location. Upon arrival, she was waiting for me inside with a 2-page document, account payable pairing anxious. I sat beside her on the couch and asked her to read the timeline, surprising her. We had always been in tune with each other, and her fear only intensified my anxiety. I explained that I needed her to do this for me, and after a moment, she complied. The timeline covered the period from when my wife was hired until today, outlining how her friendship with the other man began, the workplace culture, and how he presented himself differently. While engaging in jokes with colleagues, he distanced himself from frivolous activities and effectively managed his department. He began looking out for my wife, marking the beginning of a slippery slope that led to the events that unfolded. The relationship between my wife and the other man, whom I'll refer to as account payable, seemed to evolve gradually within the workplace. Account payable made a concerted effort to ensure her work was recognized, going out of his way to acknowledge her contributions. This acknowledgement laid the foundation for a friendship to develop between them. As their friendship deepened, account payable began confiding in my wife about his struggles at home. He vented about his personal life, and my wife, being a compassionate listener, offered her support. In turn, she shared details about her own challenges, such as her mother's rel account payable say. Looking back, she regrets not speaking up earlier about the in-account payable appropriate nature of their conversations. However, her perception of account payable as one of the good ones at work clouded her judgment. At the time, she refrained from burdening me with her concerns, as I was dealing with issues involving my father. She felt her problems were insignificant compared to mine, and found solace in confiding in account payable instead. Little did she realize that this would be the catalyst for the emotional affair that ensued. Despite our typically open communication, my wife concealed these interactions from me. She believed she was shielding me from unnecessary worry, unaware of the growing intimacy between her and account payable. In her mind, I remained her top priority, and she assumed I would be there for her no matter what. The flirtation between my wife and account payable escalated both at work and through text messages. Account payable's advances became more overt, and my wife, her account payable flattered by the attention, reciprocated. He mentioned an upcoming promotion and expressed his desire to ensure she was considered, acknowledging her as one of the top employees. Their first physical contact occurred when account payable hugged her after the promotion announcement, humorously suggesting she could thank him later. This marked the beginning of a slippery slope that led them to his hotel room, under the pretext of celebrating her success. In the privacy of his room, account payable's advances became more aggressive. He repeatedly expressed his attraction to her, making suggestive comments about what he would do if he were in my shoes. Eventually, he kissed her, catching her off guard and causing her to freeze up. Despite her initial hesitation, account payable persisted, leading to a moment of physical intimacy. In the aftermath, my wife account payable pled with feelings of guilt and shame. She discreetly left the bed and retreated to her room, where she spent the night in tears, consumed by thoughts of me. The following morning, she faced the daunting task of concealing the truth from me, resorting to lies about her absence at work and the events that transpired during their extended stay. The burden of her secret weighed heavily on her, yet the fear of revealing the truth to me seemed insurmountable. Realizing that infidelity was a non-negotiable boundary for me, my wife initiated steps to terminate her affair with account payable, opting to restrict their communication solely to work-related matters. Despite her attempts to reintegrate into our relationship, the guilt weighed heavily upon her. During a confrontation initiated by account payable, my wife initially agreed to put their actions behind them, but account payable persisted until their conversation was interrupted by a colleague. Distraught and overwhelmed, my wife reached out to her sister, leading to the revelation of the affair to her, paralleling my own discovery. Acknowledging the necessity of individual counseling, I resolved to seek their account payable why to navigate the complexities of our situation, drawing from my past experiences following my father's affair. Additionally, I contemplated the possibility of employing a polygraph account payable H test to gain further clarity on the situation. In reaching out to OBS, I uncovered more about account payable's history, including allegations of past infidelity and abuses of power. This revelation underscored the gravity of our circumstances and emphasized the importance of careful deliberation and decisive action as we moved forward. OBS, who had been reprimanded by account payable and labeled as bitter, admitted that she overlooked the warning signs because of her pregnancy at the time. Despite no further accusations, account payable had maintained a solid reputation. Learning this triggered a storm of emotions, especially intensified anger toward account payable. However, OBS's insights motivated me to take decisive steps. The following morning, I promptly contacted the attorney recommended by OBS, initiating the divorce process. Driven by a potent mix of anger and betrayal, I quickly packed my wife's belongings, leaving them outside with the divorce account payable heirs. When confronted, my wife attempted to shift blame onto her affair partner, but I refused to accept excuses. The divorce proceedings progressed swiftly, thanks to my attorney's careful preparation, resulting in a prompt resolution. As I moved out and embraced the changes, Open Broadcaster software remained a pillar of support. Despite the wounds from betrayal, our bond grew stronger as we navigated the tumultuous aftermath together, finding solace and healing in each other's company. Reflecting on the events leading to this point, my wife's infidelity shattered the trust that formed the foundation of our relationship. Learning about her affair with account payable and her subsequent lies left me feeling betrayed and deeply hurt. It wasn't just the act of cheating itself, but also the emotional betrayal that hurt the most. Knowing that my wife had formed a connection with another man and engaged in intimate moments behind my back dealt a blow to my self-esteem and sense of worth. Her prioritization of her desires over our marriage and the disregard for our vows added to the pain. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of betrayal. Navigating the divorce process, account payable pled with a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, directed toward my wife, her affair partner, and even myself for not noticing the signs earlier. Sadness for the loss of the life and future we had envisioned, and disaccount payable appointment in realizing the betrayal by the person I loved and trusted. However, amidst the chaos, there was hope for a future of healing and rebuilding. With OBS's unwavering support, I was confident that together, we could overcome this ordeal and emerge stronger than ever. So, as I took the first steps toward rebuilding my life, I did so with determination and optimism, knowing that brighter days lay ahead.